Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Tesla stock is down about 6% today, but we do have some encouraging news to go over in regards to Tesla and in regards to this whole trade war situation. Trump is walking back, making deals, if you will, on some of the negative headlines that we had last night that pushed futures on the S&P down about 2% and the NASDAQ down about 3%. We have since recovered a lot of that loss. S&P at the time of recording this video is negative 0.63%, but some of your big tech names like Tesla, Apple down 4%, Nvidia down 3%, Microsoft and Google, and well, Tesla also in the red today. So what is going on? I will give you all of the latest information that I promise you will only hear on this channel. So we will get to Tesla stock in just a moment, but I do think it's important to take a look at all of the headlines today that are moving our markets. Some good for Tesla, some not so good for Tesla. If you guys would like to see these headlines when they are posted, go ahead and follow my X account over there. It is Michael Tyler. I do as well share some I wouldn't say personalized opinions, but I think that's a great way to put it, of what's going on when new information breaks. I give you the no bullshit breakdown of what this means for your money. I also share with you longer term theses on markets, so on and so forth, and you can see that over here on the X account. Now let's start with some of these headlines. Trump trade advisor says Trudeau needs to recognize it is not a drug war, or it is a drug war, not a trade war. So kind of walking back some of the language that people have been using about this new trade war with Canada and Mexico. Now, one of the more negative headlines today, Donald Trump is considering hitting the EU with a 10% tariff on imported goods. He says, quote, but some want to put a 10% tariff on the EU. They're talking about doing it on all imports from the EU. Quote, Trump is testing the water with Canada and Mexico and what he can get away with. And some really good news today, considering last night's news of blanket 10% tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and 10% on China. Donald Trump posted on Truth Social and then reposted this on his X account. He says, quote, I just spoke with President Claudia Sheinbaum of Mexico. It was a very friendly conversation wherein she agreed to immediately supply 10,000 Mexican soldiers on the border separating Mexico and the United States. These soldiers will be specifically designated to stop the flow of fentanyl and illegal migrants into our country. We further agreed to immediately pause the anticipated tariffs for a 1-month period during which we will have negotiations headed by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent, and Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick, and high-level representatives of Mexico. I am looking forward to participating in those negotiations with President Sheinbaum as we attempt to achieve a quote-unquote deal between our two countries. So yes, Mexican tariffs are being delayed, I think is the best way to put it. And really what Wall Street is taking out of this is these tariffs are probably just a negotiations tactic after all, whereas it really didn't sound like that yesterday. It sounded like, as Trump had said himself, there's really nothing Mexico, Canada, or China could do to reverse these tariffs. That is what he said, like word for word, that these tariffs there's no negotiating these tariffs. And we wake up today and apparently they are negotiating the tariffs. Now, in terms of the markets, I actually think this is good longer term as well. It's going to sound bad when I say this, but the markets may start to really not take what Trump says seriously in regards to tariffs. If you're going to throw tariffs on a country, the next day, 12 hours later, say you're going to quote unquote negotiate the tariffs, then maybe 3 months from now, when we get tariffs about China or news about tariffs from China, the markets may not respond to that like they did last night with a huge sell-off. Also in the news today, temporary protected status for Venezuelan migrants is terminated. Atlanta's Fed Bostic says uncertainty has broadened considerably. Tariff impacts are hard to incorporate, emphasizes the need to monitor business and family reactions amid rapid changes. Inflation remains the primary focus. I think it's very interesting that he says this. emphasizes need to monitor business, okay? Because if you cannot pass on cost to consumers, I don't know where you guys live, who you know, what income demographic you're in, but if you know people in middle, lower incomes, I mean, 50% of Americans don't have $400 for an emergency expense. They are not going to just, okay, great, we have to pay higher prices and continue to buy the same amount of products. If companies start raising prices, they will sell less of those products, okay? Just like eggs. I would bet my entire net worth on the fact that people are probably buying less eggs right now. They're switching to cheaper protein alternatives. Now, a commoditized product like eggs, it's going to be a little bit different. Supply and demand don't necessarily dictate egg prices, okay, like other things. But people are going to slow down. You can't just pass on all that cost and tariffs to consumers. You have to internalize some of that yourself. And that just means potentially laying people off, becoming more efficient in operations. And while that could actually be positive for AI, as I said in previous videos, if that can help bring down internal corporate cost, well, that's a way for paying for these tariffs. Trump says that we've made a lot of progress on Russia and Ukraine, but he does go on to say that Trump wants the rare earth metals and materials that Ukraine has, that if they're going to make a deal, the U.S. wants to be involved in extracting those rare earth materials. And in huge news today, Trump says TikTok could go into the United States Sovereign Wealth Fund. And Donald Trump officially signs an executive order to create a sovereign wealth fund. Now, a sovereign wealth fund is a country's essentially stock portfolio, right? They could put other things in it, but it allows the government to go out and buy stock. Now, some would say this is not great, especially if the government has voting rights in companies. Obviously, that's not ideal. We know this from like Tesla's, right? Their Elon's compensation vote. Like the Norwegian wealth fund, the big wealth funds, sovereign wealth funds that own positions in Tesla were big contributors to, getting Elon's compensation package passed. And they, in different scenarios could be positive or negative for certain companies. But all of that, all things considered, it is the government buying stocks. I would say that is a positive for our markets, as the government would probably be long-term holders and investors in these companies. And Trump says Elon has access only to letting people go if we need to. And then Trump kind of walked everything back and says nobody is out of tariffs. So basically reiterating that you may still get tariffs put on you if you don't meet our demands. And Trump says we won't let Elon go places where there is conflict. Trump says Elon is doing things when we give him approval, and it is confirmed Elon Musk is not taking a paycheck from the government, which we kind of already knew that. And Trump says that he had a good talk with Trudeau. We did not get many headlines on the Canadian tariff negotiations, but apparently he had a good talk with Trudeau. And Trump says we do not need Canadian cars, lumber, or agriculture. Trump reiterates that we will have a big negotiation with Mexico. And Trump says he wouldn't mind making our cars in the United States. And he says he will speak to China over the next 24 hours about these tariffs. Trump says China won't be involved with the Panama Canal for long. And he says China will be dealt with on Panama Canal issues. And Trump says China tariffs will go up if we can't make a deal. Now, good news is markets really did not react negatively to this, because again, if you're going to put tariffs on a country and then immediately walk it back like 12 hours later, the markets are only going to give you the benefit of the doubt that you're being truthful for so long. And I think the markets are already starting to lose some of the credibility that they had for Trump, especially again overnight when markets were down a lot on this tariff news. And specifically the part where Trump said there's basically no negotiations that these countries could do to stop the tariffs. And then again, we wake up and there's negotiations happening and a pause on tariffs. Like, you're only going to be seen as credible to your word for so long in that circumstance. Trump says US aid is a good concept, but has radical left lunatics. Trump says we should use fewer chemicals in agriculture, and really, when I tell you the headlines were everywhere today, they were, because the next headline was, quote, I want Ukraine to give us rare earths. Like, you go from agriculture chemicals to rare earths in a minute. I mean, it was kind of all over the place today. And Trump says if we can't make a deal with China, tariffs will be substantial. Trump says I am not happy with the Panama situation, but they have agreed to some things. Bostic says businesses are uniformly saying they plan to pass the cost along from any tariffs. And again, this is where I highly disagree. You will not be able to pass on too much of a cost increase. Like, if you get a 25% tariff put on, could you pass along like 20% of that to consumers without them really revolting or noticing or changing spending habits? Probably. But there's no way in hell you could pass on even 50% of the cost increase. Like, you're not going to be able to go raise prices 12% on many products without people starting to kind of revolt against that. And Fed Bostic says, again, to cut rates again, would want to see housing inflation begin to slow. Bostic says does not expect clarity on inflation enough by March to move. I disagree with that. I think the Fed will firmly be cutting rates in March, but we shall see. The good news is housing inflation has now come down for over 2 months. Some people would say 3 months. So housing inflation is making great progress. And for the first time since Q2 of 2010, market rents are negative on a year-over-year basis. That doesn't happen all too often, and that's a good sign that inflation in the housing sector will continue to improve. And it is said that Trump is calling all reporters to the White House for a press conference. It looks like at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time today, and this time he could be speaking with Trudeau, so we could get some Canadian tariff headlines and hopefully a walk back of the tariffs that we have put on Canada. I mean, that would be good for markets. In the news today, specifically for Tesla, we will now switch gears. Cantor Fitzgerald raises their target price to $425 per share from $365 per share. Tesla has secured a new $144 million Megapack contract to install 142 Megapack units in what will be one of the largest battery energy storage facilities in Japan. The facility will be a 548 megawatt hours. Operations will begin by early 2027. The Tesla Model Y was the #1 best-selling BEV in Europe in 2024, despite registrations dropping 17%, according to new data from Jado Dynamics. The Model Y was the 4th most registered car overall in Europe in 2024. Tesla has emerged as a leader in the vehicle lifespan and mileage among various car brands and fuel types, as per a recent study. Tesla's EVs are expected to cover an average of 204 miles over their lifetime, surpassing all other brands regardless of powertrain. This significantly outpaces the average for electric cars, which stood at 124,000 miles. Ontario Premier Doug Ford says he is canceling a $100 million contract with Starlink in response to Trump's tariffs on Canada. He says, quote, we'll be ripping up the province's contract with Starlink. Ontario won't do business with people hell-bent on destroying our economy. Now, Doug Ford has also removed all US-made liquor from the shelves starting on Tuesday. Elon Musk has already commented on this and said, oh well. Elon Musk said tonight that he will be doing a live in-person talk this week with JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon. A couple of weeks ago, Jamie said about Elon, quote, the guy is our Einstein. I'd like to be helpful to him and his companies as much as we can. Elon and I hugged it out. He and I had a nice long chat. And look at that. Delaware Governor Matt Mayer has issued a response to companies leaving Delaware. He said, quote, it's really important we get it right for Elon Musk or whoever the litigants are in Delaware courts. We're recognizing that there may be some things that we need to change. We're going to work on them. Basically saying Elon's going to get his compensation package approved. And I think that's going to be positive for Tesla. It's going to give us a lot more certainty. It's going to allow Elon to rightfully be paid for the appreciation that, well, was the stipulation of his contract back in 2018. And I overall think this will be a big positive for Tesla stock. Tesla now provides a discount of up to 10% on Tesla insurance for customers who frequently use FSD supervised. Quote, the more you drive with FSD supervised enabled, the bigger the discount is on your insurance premiums. This new policy is currently only for Tesla insurance customers in Arizona and Texas. You can earn up to a 10% discount on coverages when you drive 50% or more of your miles with FSD supervised enabled. US car prices face potential $3,000 increase as Trump tariffs hit the auto sector. Now, this does not apply to Tesla because all Teslas that you are going to buy in the US are built in the US. All Teslas you're going to buy in China are built in China. For the most part, the Teslas that you buy in Europe are also built in Europe. So while Ford and GM have a lot of manufacturing capabilities in Mexico and Canada, if these tariffs are not rolled back, they're going to be in a lot worse of a position than Tesla. Now, Tesla does not have a factory in Canada, but only about 2.6% of Tesla's deliveries last year were in Canada. So Tesla would have a minimal impact here, but nothing like Ford, GM, Stellantis, and basically everyone else. Now, considering Tesla's stock is down almost 6% at the time of recording this video, you have seen 249 different hedge fund institutional options trades today, totaling $191.33 million with a positive order value of 71%. So it's actually been very positive in terms of options for Tesla stock from big money. And, I would say that is, well, good to see. Hedge funds and institutions are taking this opportunity to load up on bullish positions on call options while Tesla stock is down. That's what you want to do if you are bullish on a company and you get the opportunity to do so. Now, if we take a look at what short sellers are doing today, not much of a change actually. There's only 8,500 shares that are being sold short on net. So you have borrowed shares of 597.1 thousand, return shares of 588.48 thousand. So despite the stock being down so much today, you're not seeing a huge shorting pressure, which I would say is also a good sign. Tesla's short interest of free float sits at 2.25%. You have $25.15 billion sold short in Tesla, totaling about 63 million shares that are sold short. And keep in mind, the short interest has fallen from almost 3% down to 2.25%, which on a stock like Tesla that's over $1 trillion in market cap value, well, maybe not anymore, but was over $1 trillion in market cap value, that is quite a decrease in the overall short interest. Now, over on StockTwits, it's not surprising retail investors are feeling kind of bearish on Tesla, coming in today with a score of 33, which reads as bearish. 1 day ago, it was neutral at 47. Again, not a big surprise considering, what's going on with the stock today. But I would say that's a positive. Usually you want to buy when people are bearish, and Tesla in the 380s, I think, is a steal of a deal compared to where it's going to be by the end of this year. Now, message volume is high today at 58. 1 day ago, it was low at 40. So message volume is increasing. People are talking about Tesla a little bit more, and the participation ratio is hitting one of the highest levels you've seen in a while, coming in today high at 56. Tesla's global inventory numbers have recently shot up. The Model Y at 16,534, the Model 3 at about 6,000, the Model X at 4,100, and the Model S at about 2,600. Cybertruck sitting here at about 999. Tesla continues to run about 4,000 different ads with Google. And just a broader look at markets, you do have the percent of stocks trading above their 50-day moving average. About 6.5% of stocks today are falling below that 50-day moving average, down to 41.18%. So, you're not that very bullish on broader markets. And, well, that could give markets room to rally here, especially if some of the tariff news gets rolled back. Now, CNN's Fear and Greed Index today is neutral at 45, but almost back into fear. If we drop to 44, technically you'll be in fear. Market momentum, extreme fear. Stock price strength, extreme fear. Stock price breadth is fear. Put and call options, fear. Market volatility is neutral. Safe haven demand is fear. And junk bond demand in extreme greed. This morning, we did get ISM manufacturing PMIs. Headline number comes in at 50.9. The expectation was 49.8, so a little bit of an improvement there. Manufacturing employment comes in at 50.3, positive now for the first time in a long time. We were expecting a number of 47. Construction spending month over month came in handsomely above expectations at 0.5%. New orders comes in at 55.1. Expectation was 52.8, so that was a beat as well. Prices also beat, coming in at 54.9 versus expectations of 53. So basically a beat across the board, but again, manufacturing prices beating is not exactly what you want to see. You can also see today 10-year treasury yields are falling about 3.5 basis points down to 4.53%, which actually means investors are going out and they're buying the bonds. With the tariff news that we got today, people are not concerned about inflation, rising or being an issue. They're actually more concerned about economic activity that could weaken. That is what 10-year treasury yields falling today is telling you. If 10-year treasury yields were moving higher today, then that would tell you, well, Wall Street's fearful about inflation. But it doesn't look to be the case. Now, from a technical perspective, Tesla stock is bouncing or bounced today at this line that I've had drawn at about $377. You did undershoot that for a moment, hitting a low of the day today at about $374.39, and you bounced right back up. That's exactly what you wanted to see because as I explained in previous videos, like the video last night, if you did not find support around 377, then the odds were good you were going to break down to your 100-day moving average at about $326 per share. And then if you hit that level and broke below, you'd fall to that 200-day moving average around $263. So it's a great sign to see Tesla bouncing here at this level. But honestly, I think Wall Street is way overly pessimistic about what tariffs are going to mean for Tesla specifically. Like, we should see Ford and GM getting absolutely destroyed today. Ford's down 1.64%. Not really a big deal. GM's down 3%, so they're taking it a little bit harder, but Tesla's down almost double that, right? It should be opposite. Tesla should be down 3%, GM should be down 6%, and Ford should be down probably something similar. Instead, that's not happening. A lot of this could have to do with some of the sell-off in big tech. Again, Nvidia, Apple, really all of your big tech names are in the red today, besides Meta. And I think this is the wrong reaction for Tesla, and it will be short-lived. Again, considering nothing has changed in the past couple of days for Tesla, if anything, earnings were great. Tesla had bad numbers, but the stock still rallied on AI excitement, right? Do you really want to bet against Tesla when Tesla is doing these incredible things this year? Probably not. And from all-time highs to where we are now, the stock's down almost 22%. So if you were bullish on Tesla at all in the past couple of months, well, I think you'd want to be more bullish on Tesla considering the stock's $382. Right? You have a better price to now be buying. And that's the way that I'm looking at this. I was bullish on Tesla at 488. I'm even more bullish on Tesla today. So let me know what you think about all of this information down below in the comment section. Ladies and gentlemen, have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.